quite got to the ticket. Hey, good evening, everybody. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about a trip we took. I took with Jen and Genesis, and of course, baby soon-to-be Benjamin. Decided to take them on we took a trip earlier when we got here to the U.S. Went to about 8 different states. Went to Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, and of course some parts of Texas. But we really haven't taken a trip just about Texas. So I wanted my family to kind of understand and learn and know a little bit about where I'm from and where I have spent most of my life if I wasn't traveling with the Air Force. So I kind of devised a little plan, and we took off early on a Sunday morning to Austin. I wanted them to be able to see the Texas State Capitol, and we had a short window. The Capitol only opened for touring from 12 to 3:30, I believe, on Sunday. So we had to make sure that we got there, sometime shortly after 12. And but our trip went great getting down there. No issues at all. Got to the Capitol. Weren't a whole lot of people because it's hot, and I think people are just not getting out like they would otherwise. But so we really we got to see the Capitol without all the crowds. I mean, there were people there, but it really wasn't bad. So I've got Genesis here with me. I'm going to introduce you to my son. I don't know if I've ever actually, I know he's been in our videos, but not sure if I've ever actually had him on here and asked him questions. But I kind of wanted to get his impression of some of the things that we saw on our trip. So tell me what you thought about the Texas. If you think about the Texas State Capitol, what comes to your mind? What did you think about the building itself? Was there anything unusual or interesting about that building?
I mean, it's really, really big, and that's my favorite part of it. And inside it, it's really unbelievable, because if you look up, it's really wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's talking about the dome. I don't know, some of you may not know this, but the Texas Capitol is actually taller than the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. By a matter of feet, but it's still, everything's bigger in Texas. So we got to, the Capitol itself is made out of pink granite. It's quite beautiful, quite stunning, actually. It's been there for a long, long time, but yet super functional and super well maintained, and got to see all the different governors from the very beginning of Texas. We got to go into the House chambers. We're still using the same desks that were made for the Capitol when it was built. Got to go into the Senate chamber. So really kind of cool to see where the business of Texas takes place. And of course the grounds are immaculate. Texas, thank goodness, wasn't one of these places where rioters a couple of years ago tore all this stuff down, anything dealing with the Confederacy or whatever. So all of the monuments, all the history of Texas, the not so good history and the good history, it's all there for people to see and to be able to learn from. So that was really kind of cool to see. So from there, we went ahead and headed to San Marcos, Texas. And then we went to New Braunfels, which are about halfway between Austin and San Antonio. There, I had rented a room at the Schlitterbahn Resort, and kind of a cool room. It's old. The lodging at Schlitterbahn, the park itself, I think, was built in '66 or something like that. It sits on the Comal River, beautiful river. The original park I went to when I was a kid, a little kid. It had only been open, maybe a matter of a few years at that point, but the original park we just thought it was the coolest thing. They used the actual river water in some of the rides, like the little, I can't call it a lazy river because it's not lazy, but they have a tubing ride that's really long and lots of little drops and waves and chutes. And man, I remember how much fun it was when I was a kid. I took my girls there when they were little. Almost lost my Emily. She scared me to death, fell out of the inner tube. And at that time, back then, that ride actually emptied into the Comal River, and made me really nervous as a father that I didn't have, I wasn't able to, you know, reach her. Anyway, it all worked out. Now the ride itself doesn't, it still does empty into the river, but they have lifeguards down there, and it's better set up. So what was cool about staying in Schlitterbahn at the resort itself was, quite frankly, just the ability to be able to access the park for an extra day. The resort accommodations are, they're higher, obviously, than the surrounding area. We could have stayed in a cheaper hotel, but I did the math, and by staying one night on the resort, we were actually able to access the park all day on the day that we checked in and all day on the day we checked out. From there, we went on to San Antonio, and with our several things in mind. We wanted to see the Alamo, of course. We wanted to go to SeaWorld and the Riverwalk, and we were able to do all of that. We stayed at a Hilton hotel, I guess Hampton Inn, and what was cool about one of the things I did at SeaWorld differently is I bought some food passes for my wife and my son. They love to eat. I don't eat quite as much as they do. And those food passes were not that outrageous. You could spend almost what I paid for the all-day food pass on one barbecue meal.
Oh, really? That's a shocker.
I was talking about how I bought the food pass for Jen and Genesis, and it allowed them to, every 90 minutes, to go and get a meal at the park. So they really took advantage of that. They had their watches set, so as soon as the 90 minutes was up, we were in another restaurant at SeaWorld eating. So that was a very good idea that I had, because I know they both love to eat. You're not allowed to bring coolers into the park, so really, you know, you're at the park's mercy on their prices. So SeaWorld, not a lot of people, and again, it was hot. It was like 111 degrees that day. I think it was 106, 107 degree actual temperature, and then the little bit, not much humidity, but just enough to raise it up a little bit for the feels like temperature. It was hot, but we just tried to, you know, get in out of the sun as much. If you were in the shade, it was tolerable, because there isn't a lot of humidity in San Antonio. So we really enjoyed it. Enjoyed seeing the orcas, the killer whales, the sea lions, the beluga whales. We got to see a big shark tank, and the dolphins, and of course the rides is what Genesis really loved. He rode the Steel Eel, which is, it's one of those roller coasters I just don't even care to get on, because it's up and down and up and down and up and down. Doesn't do much for me. He rode it 8 or 9 times, but then there was other roller coasters that he rode, and Jen and I actually rode as well. So he got a lot of riding in at the SeaWorld. There was not much lines at all?
I rode it all actually.
You rode all of them?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was, SeaWorld was great. Got home, probably, we stayed to the park till it closed, which was a little after 9, and then maybe a 25-minute drive back to the hotel. The next morning, we got up and we were at the Alamo by 9:15. We had a reservation for a tour at the Alamo. And I got to tell you, I know a lot about Texas history, and been to the Alamo several times in my life. But they've really, if anybody from the Historical Commission down there is listening to this in the state of Texas, you guys have done a great job with that monument, with that historical area. You know, commercialism had kind of taken over a lot of the original grounds of the Alamo mission, but they've worked hard to try to recover a lot of those too. So they've done a wonderful job redoing the church and the long barracks, and you know, where most of the men died during the battle with Mexico. Really, really interesting, cool stuff. Genesis, what's one impression of the Alamo that you could share with us? What something that you learned maybe?
First of all, I've learned that without that battle, Texas now would be like not part of United States. And so I really respect all of the souls that fought during that battle.
Yeah.
Really,
you remember how many men fought those 3,000 Mexican troops? You remember?
Actually, no, sir.
183. That's how many men lost their lives at the Alamo that day. But they managed for 13 days to keep the Mexican army out, and of course were overrun at the end. And Genesis is right. That battle, even though, you know, the Texans didn't win it, it's what spurred the people of Texas to get behind the independence from Mexico. And the brutality of Santa Anna and the Mexican troops on the Texans really resonated, if I could find a good word for that, which led, of course, to the Battle of San Jacinto just a couple of weeks later. 7 weeks later, I believe, is what General Sam Houston, and that's when they literally took Santa Anna and the entire Mexican army, and lost 6 men in that battle, and won the independence for Texas from Mexico. So he's right. Texas wouldn't have been its own country, and then of course eventually annexed by the United States had the Alamo not happened. So really, really interesting. From there, we went on over back to the River Center Mall to the IMAX theater, and we watched the movie of the Alamo. And so they got a good history lesson through that about how all of that happened. So it was important to kind of put it all in context. After that, it was pretty, again, another really hot day. I think we went back and rested a little bit at the hotel. I went ahead and took Genesis over to Lackland Air Force Base because my son has an interest in about maybe 3 years when he graduates of possibly, joining the United States Air Force. And that is, of course, where everybody in the Air Force goes to basic training. So I thought I'd take him over there and let him see it. So he and I drove over while Jen rested in the hotel, and he got to see a little bit about basic training. So Knack, what did your takeaway on that day? I know we didn't get to see a lot of folks because it was late in the afternoon. It was really hot. I'm sure they were under heat warning, and there were only so much activity going on. But anything leave an impression on you at the Air Force Base?
For me, actually, we saw the airmen having their basic training, and that actually motivates me because one day I'm gonna be there to do it,
Yeah.
And so give me motivation to always work hard and study hard first, of course.
And so he has lots of questions about basic training, but this I think has answered some of those questions. It's one thing to hear it from Papa, it's another thing to see it with your own eyes. So it's changed a lot since I went through. I actually showed him the old barracks I went through basic training in, and what the new ones look like, which are quite nice actually. And I'm sure the whole thing has changed. But he got to see some of them, marching in groups of 3 and 4 around the base, getting things done, because you can't go anywhere by yourself on the base. And he got to see a lot of slick sleeves. Got to see some graduates that had graduated the day before down at the Riverwalk with their families and that type of thing. So, yeah, everything was good. We went back, got Jen, headed to the Riverwalk, and I don't remember what we did. What did we do the rest of that night? I think we just came back to the hotel and took it easy after dinner. Yeah. And the next morning, we got up and we started heading back to East Texas. So that was our little trip to Austin and New Braunfels and San Antonio. So hopefully you'll enjoy the pictures and the videos that Jen's going to attach to this, and see a little bit about what we did on our 1-week adventure in the state of Texas. Looking at a little bit of the history and some of the fun things there are to do here. So, sorry we haven't talked to you guys in a while. Been a lot going on here. Please bear with us, but hopefully this video is enjoyable. You guys have a great evening. The good, the bad, the Philippines.